It is Wednesday, February 4th. I went to my first caucus last night. I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. I read up on the event on the DFL website before, because that is the party I intended to caucus with. And I knew where I was going and had typed up a resolution on the official form that I found up on that website for something that was important to me. I really wanted to get involved and honestly went every bit as well as I could have hoped. So yesterday, when we were getting ready to go, picked up a buddy from his home near me in the next precinct over, and then we headed to the local middle school. St. Louis Park is divided into wards and precincts, and each precinct caucus was held in a classroom. Precinct 8, appropriately enough, took place in a social studies classroom, and we were filled to capacity, about 40 people in the room. The crowd swayed older and very white for my precinct. There were maybe 8 people who were about the same age as me, like 30s, and we were the youngest folks in there. In total, I think the only non-white people were 2 black women. One of those women we had unanimously elected as our precinct chair. She actually lives about a block and a half from me in an apartment building. And I volunteered and was confirmed as one of the 2 vice precinct chairs, which is really going to be, I don't think it's going to be too much, but it's organizing and it's getting the group together and representing my community at the very bottom grassroots level of our local DFL party. So we had 1 vote during the event, which we wrote on a note card, and that was to select our choice for our DFL candidate for governor. Amy Klobuchar has announced. There was one other guy who announced that nobody had heard of, so there wasn't really another candidate running. So I think we had like 37 out of 39 voting people voting for Klobuchar from our precinct. I think her nomination is all but certain. She's got all the endorsements from other candidates that are well respected in this area. A lot of the agenda was spent describing the next couple of conventions that are going to happen. The DFL is going to be involved with. There is both a district and a county convention happening over the next few months. Funnily enough, for the district convention, we had to determine our delegates. And the number of delegates that our precinct had to assign was based on the party election results from the last major election. And our district is so overwhelmingly blue that we had 3 more delegates to assign than we had participants in the room, even though the classroom we were in was at standing room only. The county convention happens a bit later, and there we only had 1 delegate and 1 backup to assign. One of my neighbors who volunteered for that works at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, and he did a pretty good job of briefing the rest of us on just how important both that convention and then the upcoming county attorney election is going to be. Because in short, that's going to be the person who bears the heaviest weight on prosecuting all of the crimes that I and my neighbors have been witnessing over the past month or so. We also sourced and elected volunteers for subcommittees during these delegations. The subcommittees vary in purpose from setting up and administering the conventions. There are committees to vet candidates. And then the one that I was most interested in is collating, reviewing, and consolidating resolutions. So I was one of 2 volunteers from my precinct for the resolutions subcommittee, and that appealed to me for a few different reasons. First, resolutions kind of take the personalities out of politics, and it really focuses on policy. Those resolutions can generally take 2 forms, either a specific action that the party should take, like ejecting ICE, or a longer-standing resolution on a particular issue meant to be a long-standing value or plank for the party platform. So the resolution I brought with me was the second kind. I want the DFL party as a whole to support and enact stronger personal privacy laws. It was very cool to be able to present that to my precinct. Neighbors had a lot of questions about what I was talking about. So kind of explaining the current nature of our I won't call it a surveillance state so much with that audience, but the way that data brokers and other large tech companies that are focused on domestic surveillance are working was pretty important to me, and it was good to be able to share some of those concerns with my neighbors. So yeah, the resolution I brought to basically make stronger personal data privacy protection a core value for the DFL was passed unanimously from my precinct. And we also had 3 other resolutions that the neighbors brought and introduced, including keeping ICE away from schools and a formal stance against government retaliation in our party. So, my understanding is that that role of the resolution subcommittee is going to entail reading through all of the past resolutions from all of the precincts and consolidating them, including rewording as necessary to make sure we have concise, strongly worded resolutions that aren't, far too long for anybody to ever comprehend, but that do truly represent the values that were brought forward in these caucuses. I'm really interested in reading through all those resolutions. I am super curious to see what other people are putting down. I want to see how well written they are. I want to see what they focus on. I want to see how many times we see the same themes. And just seeing that personally, I think is going to be really interesting. I've always been a sort of person who wants to understand as much context as possible. And so just the literal collation of values, if you will, is pretty interesting because it does give me some insight into a piece of political machinery that I just was not familiar with before yesterday. Politics is often easy to dismiss because we associate it with supporting one lying face or another. But what I can tell you from last night is that there are many ways to get involved that are going to suit different personal strengths, and you can pretty much avoid just trying to champion one person over another. And you don't have to run for office or volunteer for subcommittee positions or campaigns. A big part of getting involved that I think is really important, both for your community and for yourself, is just showing up. Participate in the democratic process from the grassroots on up if you can, and continue to put in work towards making your community better. Those are things that I can generally recommend to everyone, but I think they're especially important to hear for people in my demographic. Making your community better is both healthy for you, for your community, and it's a fulfilling outlet that is going to benefit both you and the people around you. And if you can kind of base yourself around that, that is a pretty solid platform to stand on. Far more, in my opinion, than just accumulating wealth.